Yo, what's happening everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk of Elite Wagers. I am your host, Elite Wagers, and this is NFL Week 2. Obviously, last weekend, first weekend back in football. For me personally, we're very excited to get involved in the week. But we're going to move on to week 2. But basically, for this episode, I'm going to run down a little bit on what's going to be involved. For those of you that are new here, I did used to run an account called NFL Best Bet. So NFL has been my bread and butter for a number of years. I just love football. So we're going to go back to my basics on the layout of how I post my bets and things like that. So obviously we're going to have the normal straight bets, which will include money line, spreads, totals, things like that. And then I'm also going to share a money line parlay. So the money line parlay for last week is six legs, all money line, and it cashed at plus 100, plus 1,000. So we're going to try and go back to back for that. I'm also going to be sharing a touchdown parlay as well. I also do a thing called the weekend long parlay, which is a parlay that consists of 5 different sports from across the weekend. 5 legs, 5 different sports, ranging from sort of Friday to Sunday. And that's basically, I've done it for a number of years where weekends are my chill weekends off work and things like that. I get to sit down, kick back and put some sports on. So I like to have 5 different sports, just try and keep active a little bit, sit down and be able to relax and just watch some different sports. So I've got a weekend long parlay, 5 legs, 5 different sports. I will be sharing a player prop parlay. Personally, I hit a few of these on the weekend, so I'm going to be putting together one of those to share with you guys as well. And then I'm also going to be playing a same game parlay for each primetime game. So Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football. But I'm going to go through where you can see these. So if you want to see everything, it's all going to be on YouTube. So I'm going to be breaking it down on YouTube and on Spotify in this episode. Twitter, I will be posting my week 2 straight bets. So again, the money line, the spreads and the totals and things like that. I will also be sharing on there the Sunday night football same game parlay and the Monday night football same game parlay. So if you want to see those 2 as well, make sure you head over to my Twitter here. Make sure you click the big follow button, like and retweet everything and things like that, and make sure you interact and drop some comments on who you are going to be taking this week and things like that. But that's where you can see everything from me for the foreseeable future, basically. And it's basically, it's hard for me to post everything on Twitter because it's so long. There's so many things to put in a tweet, so it's very difficult. So again, it'll all be on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music and everything. But make sure you head over to Twitter for the other primetime same game parlays. So we're going to run down a little recap on last week. I'll run down the fantasy recap when I click onto Fanteam. But in terms of the betting slate from week 1, the straight bets didn't do too good, so we actually went 1-4. I think it was minus 3.1 units. We went Cardinals minus 6.5 cashed, and then we lost on the Steelers minus 3, which they actually won by 2. Bengals minus 5.5, Bears plus 1.5, and Dolphins money line we all lost. So we were negative, but then we did hit the money line parlay, which was plus 100. So we ended up for NFL Week 1 2-4 for plus 6.9 units. So off to a good start if we include everything that I posted for the week. But now we're going to move into week 2, and we're going to start off with the fantasy football. But obviously, again, before we do, make sure you head over to my Twitter, drop me a follow, go through some of my tweets and things. Drop me a like, a retweet and things like that. Also, head over to my YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. and then make sure you're going through my videos that I post and that I have posted. There's a lot of valuable information across all these videos and things like that, and a few shorts I've got, etc. So make sure you're heading over to these, dropping me a like, a subscribe, a retweet or a share, repost. That'll basically allow me to help more people win more money on fantasy and the betting. So let's get into fantasy football. Okay, let's get into fantasy football. I'm going to start off in the defence and special teams area. I'm going to try and save a little bit of money. Obviously, you've got a lot of teams here in the price category that are relatively expensive with some decent matchups. Obviously, the Broncos playing very well last week, defence number one. The Rams against Tennessee, which is a team that I would like to highlight, but obviously budget and things like that. So I'm going to go down the bottom of the list, really. Just gone past it to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did I pick up? Yeah, I did. And basically, they had a decent game last week, 2 interceptions, and they allowed just 10 points to the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, this week they do play the Cincinnati Bengals, but last week for the Bengals they did really struggle against the Cleveland Browns defense. So I think if Jacksonville want to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to try and limit the threat of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And I think at this price, I'm willing to take a gamble that their offense will stall again. In terms of the quarterback position, there's a lot of players at the top here in terms of the price. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen being the top two, who had that really, really fun game to watch last Sunday. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, neither of those really played, their best ability, to the best of their ability. Joe Burrow again as well, he was very poor against Cleveland Browns. But there's obviously a few players, differential kind of players, which I really like in this area. Obviously, Justin Fields is one I'm going to be watching for the next couple of weeks. But he does have a harder matchup against Bills, and obviously, yes, the Bills allowed a lot of points to Baltimore. But I'm not willing to back that the Bills basically fumble in another divisional game. So I'm going to go down to Old Faithful Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, 244 passing yards last week with 4 passing touchdowns. Obviously got the win against the New York Jets in a high-scoring game. And this week they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers managed to keep the 49ers to 17 points. Now, I've been doing a lot of comparison between the Steelers and the 49ers, where I think actually the Steelers are the better team. I think they have the better quarterback, and I think at the moment they've got the better pass catchers. Obviously a few injuries for the 49ers and things, but I think this Pittsburgh Steelers offense and defense is going to allow for a really good game for Rodgers and his receiving core, and I think he can better what the 49ers were able to do against the Seattle Seahawks defense from last week. So now we're going to go into the running back room, and there's going to be a lot of money spent in this running back room. I'm going to start off with Derrick Henry, obviously playing against Cleveland that we just spoke about, and the last couple of games between the two teams, they've been relatively close, bar the most recent game where the Ravens blew the Browns out. But 169 yards, 13 receiving yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for Derrick Henry. I don't think there's a scenario on earth that doesn't, include Derrick Henry rushing for 100 plus and a touchdown. No matter what the game script actually comes out to or how the game unfolds, I think Derrick Henry is in their plans for sort of every kind of scenario and situation. So I think it's hard not to put him in the game after what he was able to do against Buffalo. I'm then going to go for Christian McCaffrey. I'm not particularly high on this at the moment. He's still a really big injury scare for myself personally, but his workload from last week was absolutely huge, and I think he's going to get another workload like that against this Saints team that sort of no one expected to hold on or to stick around last week, basically. So 69 rushing yards, 73 receiving yards, 9 receptions for Christian McCaffrey. So again, the workload is very, very high, and he's the main focal point on offense. Not many pass catchers that are top tier, so Christian McCaffrey is going to be getting a relatively favourable workload for us in the running back room. And then there's obviously a few players that I'd like to look down towards. Chuba Hubbard is one of those. Obviously Saquon Barkley as well. But again, I don't really like these two matchups for the two teams. Bryce Hall again as well, but against Buffalo. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't do too much against the Packers last week, so I want to watch him for a few more weeks. I do really like James Conner, and he's got a nice matchup against the Carolina defense. But I'm ideally not going to go for James Conner this week, and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm actually going for Javonte Williams, who had a really, really good week last week in terms of his touchdowns. He got 2 touchdowns, 54 rushing yards, 10 receiving yards, 2 receptions. It was clear that he was the main red zone threat, and obviously they did get quite close to the end zone on a few occasions, and he just had to punch it in. But I think there's going to be another game script like that for the Cowboys against the Giants this week. I think the Giants let up. I think it was 20 plus. I think it was 22 or something like that, and only scored 6. So I think, in the last 8 games straight, the Cowboys have won. And they've won 9 of the last 10. 7 of those have been by 6 or more points. So again, another game script which, if the Cowboys are leading for a majority of the time, Javonte Williams is going to get the ball on the ground, and I think he can punch another one in for a touchdown. Okay, so moving on to the wide receiver room. Zay Flowers is going to be there. I don't normally like going for a wide receiver and a running back double stack, but the way Lamar Jackson played last week and the way the Baltimore play calling kind of happened, it allowed for both areas of the field to be used a lot, and I think it can be a similar thing again this week with the Cleveland Browns coming to town. 143 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Obviously a high scoring game against the Bills. I don't expect it to be this high again, but as I mentioned a minute ago, I think Lamar's going to need to use his arm, as well as handing off to Derrick Henry as well. So I think both of these two players are the main guys in both areas, and I think they can both succeed within this game against the Cleveland Browns. I'm then going to go for Puka Nacua. He temporarily left the game last week with a suspected concussion. He came back after a few snaps, so he did actually leave and then came back, but he was absolutely crucial in their win against the Titans. Not the Titans, sorry, against the Texans. Obviously only 14-9. He didn't get a touchdown, but he still had 23 total points. 130 receiving yards, 1 rushing yard, 10 receptions, so a huge game through the air. Obviously Matt Stafford is known for needing to sling it, but the Titans defense is sort of, it was hard to say that they struggled, because the Broncos struggled a little bit on offense as well, but I think this Rams team is ready to explode. I think last week was a tough game against the Texans, obviously a little bit of rush coming off the off season and things like that, but Puka Nacua obviously came back to his best. 10 receptions, 130 plus yards. He's clearly the main guy, even with Devontae Adams opposite, but I think again Devontae Adams opposite leaves Puka Nacua open a little bit more. The Tennessee secondary is fairly good on paper, but they sort of haven't been able to replicate that in an actual game. So I'm gonna go for Puka Nacua to feast a little bit in this game. I think the Rams win, and I think Puka Nacua can get a touchdown and 100 plus again. And then my third pick is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, like I said a minute ago, I would like to pick James Conner, but I don't really like a double stack in running back and wide receiver. Obviously, I've done it for the Ravens, but I'm going to go for Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got a favourable matchup against the Carolina Panthers. 1 receiving touchdown last week, 71 receiving yards with 5 receptions, obviously in their win against the Saints. But the Saints defense wasn't expected to be sort of that good, and it wasn't that good, but I thought the Cardinals were going to sort of blow them out a little bit more, so I think they're just waiting to explode. This Carolina Panthers defense is mediocre at best. I think they allowed 20 plus last week as well, so I think Kyler Murray and Harrison Jr. can connect a lot in this game, and I think they can get the win. with Housen Jr. helping with a touchdown and a decent amount of yardage. And then, as you can see here, tight end, we've got how much? Oh, I clicked John Johnson there. In terms of the price, 8.3 million. So we're gonna have to go way down the list. But again, this is an area where I do like to save a little bit of money. And I think while we're in the saving money, I think it's hard not to go for John Johnson. I picked him by accident a minute ago, but he was in my team anyway. And basically, as I said, the New Orleans Saints had a little bit of a surprising game where they were able to keep up in their game against the Cardinals, just one touchdown down, and that was a late, well, not late touchdown, but a touchdown later in the game, so they were able to stay competitive. Spencer Rattler had 200 plus yards as well, with 76 of those coming to Juwan Johnson, so it was clear that he was trying to use Juwan Johnson on the tight end position, 8 receptions for his safety blanket. I think again this can happen again against the San Francisco defense, which I wouldn't say they struggled against the Seahawks offense last week, but I think the Saints can overachieve in this game, and I think they can make it a little bit tough for San Francisco. So I think that's my little team reveal for this week. Again, in the season-long game, I like to target majority of these games, but again, I don't want to be making a lot of subs in the season-long game, so I'm pretty much going to stick to what I've got at the moment. But for the red zone game, this is where I'm going. I like to spend a lot more money in the running back room, especially when you've got these decent matchups. And obviously, John Johnson and the defense in Jacksonville Jaguars being the areas where I saved a little bit of money, and even Aaron Rodgers, even though he had a high upside. So that is my fantasy team reveal. So we're now going to move on to some bets that I like for this week. So we're going to stay on Fan Team, and we're going to go over to their new sportsbook, new and improved sportsbook. Very competitive odds, nice lines. I find they've got the best odds and the best lines for the NFL this season. So we're going to go over to American football, obviously, and we're going to go over to USA, NFL. And the first bet I'm going to go for this week, I'm not going to go for this game, but I do have a same game parlay for that, so I'll share that in a second. So the first game I'm going to go for is in this game. It's going to be the Bengals and the Jaguars, and it's basically going to be, where is it? Let's have a look. Is it on here actually? Scoring props. It's basically going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars team total. Where is it? Oh, it's going to be there it is. It's going to be the team total, and it's going to be 22.5. Now you can get it at 20.5 on Bet365, but the odds are 1.66 instead of 1.86. I don't mind buying up for the 2 points. Again, this is a game that I've highlighted that the Bengals defense is very, very poor. They allowed the Browns just 16 points, but the Browns offense is very, very mediocre. The Jaguars put up 26 against the Carolina defense, which, in my opinion, very similar situation for the Bengals and the Panthers. The Jaguars showed that their offense is willing to go, especially in that second quarter. 2 touchdowns and a field goal in that second quarter, 17 points in total. 17 points in total. But I think the Bengals defense is very poor, and I think the Jacksonville Jaguars offense is relatively good, and I think the Bengals offense is going to be a lot better this week, but that allows for the Jacksonville Jaguars to have the ball in their hands a lot more as well if the Cincinnati Bengals are going to score. So Jacksonville Jaguars team total over, and you can get that whatever best line you get. I'm getting 22.5 at minus 115. The next one I'm going to go for is here, and that's going to be the Cowboys and Giants game. Giants minus 6. What's minus 5.5? Minus 5. 4.5. Look, I might buy down for that, but The line is -6, so basically the Cowboys to win by a touchdown, that's -110. Again, it's that situation where it's the Cowboys just dominating the New York Giants in recent years. Obviously, very tough loss for the Cowboys against the Eagles, like losing by 4, and then the Jets the Giants were just nowhere near the Commanders, losing 6-21. But again, it's another situation like that. In the last 10 head-to-heads, the Cowboys have won 8. 7 of those wins have been by 6 or more points. And obviously, the Cowboys have the potential to be a very, very good offense, where the Giants struggle to get any offense going, scoring 6 points. I think it's going to be a similar outcome for the Giants from last week, playing a high-powered offense, led by Dak Prescott and Jonathan Williams, who got in the end zone a few times as well. And yeah, I think historically the Cowboys have been able to win by 6+ points in 7 of the last 10. So I'm going to roll with them again to bounce back from their loss last week and get a win in this column this week. So next up, we're going to go down the list. Have I missed one? No, I haven't. So we're going to go down the list, and we're going to make it to the Jets and the Bills game. Very intriguing game for me. I'm going to take the over. Did I get 45? I got 45.5. So I'm going to take that. That'll be -115-ish. And yeah, again, it's another situation where there's 2 decent offenses on display from last week. Obviously, the Jets played very well against the Steelers, putting up 32 points, I think it was. And the Bills did allow a lot of points to the Ravens as well, 40+ points for them allowed. Again, the Bills, very high scoring 42 last week. 42 last week against the Ravens. And then the Jets allowed 34 points. So both defenses allowing a lot of points, both offenses scoring a lot of points. Both offenses clicked in their games, and both defenses got found out. So I think it's a situation where it could happen again. Obviously a divisional game as well, which adds to the pressure and things like that. But I think, historically, the Bills beat the Jets 40-14 last year. There was another close game where it was 20-23, so nearly hitting the over again. But I think there could be a high-scoring game within this game for these 2 teams this week. So I'm going to take the over 45.5 at -115. What's next on the list? It's going to be the Steelers. I'm going to go for the Steelers again. I'm going to go -3 on this one again. That's -110. Last week, obviously losing by 2 points, absolutely burned me. But impressive from the New Look Steelers. Offense was really, really solid. They put up 34 points. Rodgers, obviously 244 with 4 touchdowns in his debut. And then you got the Seattle Seahawks, who had the loss. Sam Darnold's debut didn't go very well. They scored only 13 points, and obviously it seems like the 49ers held them to 14 points, but that wasn't necessarily the case. They just weren't that good on offense, and obviously the 49ers scoring 17. It sounds like the defense held them to 17 points. Again, wasn't the case. They weren't very good offensively or defensively. It was just the 49ers weren't as good either. But I think the Steelers should dominate on defense and on offense this week, and I think they can finally cash me the -3 instead of winning by 2. Okay, and the next one is going to be in this game. It's going to be the Rams and the Titans. I'm going to go for the LA Rams to win. And I actually got at -5, so it's going to be a -115 again. Again, relatively high on this Rams offense. They did only squeeze past the Texans last week, but defensively played very, very solid, got a few sacks. The Titans lost to the top defense, which was the Broncos, but they struggled to find any sort of rhythm on offense. Cam Ward really, really struggled, and I'm not confident in him heading into this week. With the Rams defense getting a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud, I think they can do that with Cam Ward this week. And they're going to make life very, very difficult for this Tennessee offense. So as I said before, with Puka Nacua, he played very well in the air. Obviously Tay Adams had a few receptions as well, and you got Kyron Williams on the ground. So I think the Rams are going to dominate this game and win by 5 points. Okay, and then we're going to move down to this game, and we're going to go for the Eagles money line, and that's virtually minus 120, but you can get it at minus 115. This is a situation for me personally. I'm not very high on the Chiefs. They just tend to get very lucky. I think there's a stat last year where they won by under a touchdown in the majority of their games or something. So they lost to the Chargers in Brazil for the first time in years, and they didn't look very good anyway in that game. Chiefs will now potentially be without their wide receiver 1 and 2, with obviously Rashee Rice out and Xavier Worthy questionable heading into this game. He left with a shoulder injury from game 1. The Eagles had a lot of rust in their season opener as well against the Cowboys, but they did come up on top, winning 24-20. I expect them to be a lot better in this game. This is a game where they would have penciled that they have to beat the Chiefs, and obviously technically they are a better defense and things as well. So the Chiefs will have to really work, and I think the Eagles' offense is just way better, and I think they can dominate this game again, as they have done in the past couple of games in these head-to-heads. So I think the Eagles can get the win in this one. And then the final one I'm going to play, we've got two games on Monday Night Football, but I'm going to go for this game. And where am I at on this one? I'm going to go for a lot of points in this one. So why not end the week on a lot of points? 47. Ooh, I might buy down to 46. I'm going to buy down to 46. Okay, so no, I'm not. We're going to go for 47. Minus 110. There wasn't too many people expecting much from the Raiders heading into the season, but I was one of those people that did back them this year. I was nearly going to take their win total for the season, but I couldn't quite get there. They had a really good additions in the off-season. Obviously, Genty being a top running back, and then Geno Smith obviously being a really, really good quarterback, and it showed in this opener last week where Geno threw for 362 yards and he found Brock Bowers for 100 plus. So they're very dangerous on offense when they get that rhythm, which is definitely coming. I think they can be hard to stop. The Chargers obviously got the win against the Chiefs. They've obviously struggled to beat them in the last couple of years, and they finally got it done. I think the offense looked really good against a tough defense. And a similar situation for the Raiders. And last week their offense looked good against a decent defense, but I think both offenses can sort of show that they've improved in the off season, and they're both ready to compete for, maybe not for the division title, but compete to get potentially into the playoffs. And I think there's going to be a high scoring game, so we're going to end the week on an over 47. So these are my straight bets for the week: Jacksonville Jaguars over 22.5, Cowboys minus 6, Jets and Bills over 45.5, Steelers minus 3, Rams minus 5, Eagles money line, and then we've got the Raiders and Chargers over 47.